Hut and a happy Kentucky Derby week to you all. As many of you know, the 148th running of the Kentucky Derby taking place this Saturday, May 7th, 2022. Run for the Roses, the greatest 2 minutes in sports, and 20 horses have signed on for Saturday's event. Race 12 on the card, sponsored by Woodford Reserve. Welcome to our pre-Kentucky Derby race analysis brought to you by Edge Racing. And indeed, certainly looking to be a tremendous race and hopefully one that we can make a few dollars in as well. Joining me today, our racing manager for Edge, Joe Moran, also West Coast representative for MyRacehorse.com, and my good friend, Brian DiDonato. Some of you may have been introduced to Brian already, but a TDN racing editor, in addition to consultant here at Edge Racing. Great to have you both, gentlemen. And what many say is the most nostalgic racing day in throughout not only the country, but the world.
Yeah, great to be here. Great to be part of the Edge team as well. I'm in Louisville, actually. Looking out my window, we've had some on and off rain today. Sounds like the forecast later this week will be better, but fingers crossed for clear skies and good racing.
Joe Moran?
It's always exciting to talk about this race. You know, obviously, it's been an exciting few months leading up to this race. With the hopeful of in due time, we made the ultimate decision to bypass the Derby and point to the Preakness, which we'll get to in a little bit. But no better time and a better time of the year in horse racing. And to see 20 horses like this compete for the Run for the Roses, it's pretty awesome.
Indeed, a race that is designated for 3-year-old only. And, you know, it is pretty remarkable to think when you look back at the inaugural running in 1875, and you kind of go through some tidbits and whatnot. In 1892, just 3 horses competed in the first Saturday in May. But my racehorse, getting a taste of what the Run for the Roses is all about with Authentic. You may note a hat somewhere in the background. It was one of my few swag components of that victory, but I'm happy to have it. Authentic, of course, now it's stud at Spendthrift as a son of the world's greatest and Into Mischief. But we are looking forward to this Saturday. But, Joe, you touched on In Due Time. You know, this is a horse that had essentially earned his way into the Kentucky Derby. And I guess the bottom line is temptation. For those that are running, there are a select number of horses that obviously belong, but there are a few that don't. So talk to us a little bit about In Due Time and the thought process and kind of lead up as to the decision to bypass this Saturday's Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, well, it was not an easy decision to say the least. And for Edge Racing to even have a horse that was in the Derby contention list and yet alone get into the Derby and a bypass, and realistically our first year of operation is pretty special and an accomplishment in itself. But we had a plan going into the Lexington, and we developed this plan with this horse, being that if we won the Lexington, that was going to earn his way to the Derby. At that point, we thought 40 points. It was going to take that. As we know in history's past, horses drop off during this time of the year. In situations like, In Due Time as well, of trying to make the best decision for the horse and the ownership group. We saw something similar with early voting, a horse that was, you know, up in the rankings, established himself early on, and they chose to make the decision to bypass. The Derby is a tough race, not only 20 horses in the starting gate. When that post position gets draws, that can affect a lot of things. With young horses like this, this may be the first time they run in front of a huge, huge crowd. All those nerves and anxiety that go through the horses are factors as well. We know we have a great horse on our hands, and we just wanted to treat him that way and put him in the best spots to be successful.
Brian DiDonato, you've been very familiar through the years, and obviously with research and development as you watch these young horses. And in your mind, you know, when you look at percentages, and I know that we can weigh them out anywhere from the last 5 years or even 10 years, as tempting as it is for a horse like In Due Time, what benefits are there for a horse like him, who has had 5 career starts, has never been out of the trifecta, to bypass Kentucky Derby in lieu of, say, going to the Preakness and then perhaps looking forward?
Yeah, well, I think when you look at this Derby field, I think a lot of these horses will not be there in the Preakness. A lot of horses that are sort of, you don't exactly know what they are. I mean, it's a pretty lightly raced group, I'd say, maybe more lightly raced than usual. Obviously, Taiba, who's only run twice. So I think a lot's going to shake out in the Derby, and by waiting for the Preakness, I think we're kind of in the perfect spot to catch maybe a smaller field. Obviously, you'll probably have the Derby winner, but I think overall we'll be in a perfect spot in 3 more weeks or 2 more weeks.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, again, weighting the size of the field and whatnot, you can imagine that likely the Preakness Stakes will consist of probably half of the amount. So let's wish in due time, of course, the partners, and we want to thank the partners for their patience and understanding. I think collectively, Joe, would you agree that the partners were pretty much on the same page, obviously putting the horse first? I know it's difficult, it's tempting. And with Derby capacity at what looks to be an absolute ultimate, it's going to be a wild weekend out there. And would you say that consensus-wise, the partners were pretty satisfied with bypassing?
Yeah, it went over really well. And of course, the initial thought, it always becomes, the temptation becomes real once you see him tick into that top 20, right? And when you see it becoming a reality, the temptation grows more and more. When you talk the situation over, as hard as it is to say no running the Kentucky Derby, as an overall situation, it seemed to be a no-brainer. And I think the more we talked about it, the more we analyze the future race targets. We have 5 or 6 more grade 1s remaining throughout the year. This allows the colt to get 3 works leading up to the Preakness. Everything just really seemed to point that way and lead us to the future. And as we've said, we're in it for the long haul. It's not just running his 3-year-old career. We think this horse could run as a 4-year-old and continue on. So we're in it for the long haul, and we want to enjoy the big ride with him.
All right. Well, again, a tremendous resume thus far for In Due Time. He's done very little wrong, and in particular for the fact that he didn't necessarily handle the strip there at Keeneland last out when finishing 3rd. I think things are looking quite promising, not to mention the Haskell Stakes, which would be a return to a track in which he broke his maiden. So that will be taking place a bit later in the summer. Look forward to those updates. Well, let's jump in to what is kind of a crazy race as far as handicapping goes. And the one thing that I generally try and do in a situation like this is eliminate horses that I don't think really have much of a chance. And as you well know, I guess as they stated in the old song, Run for the Roses, Dan Fogelberg, lifetime of chance and a chance of a lifetime and a lifetime of chance. I think there are horses in this race that simply don't have a chance. Brian Donato, as the entries came out, what's the first thing that came to your mind?
When I looked at it a little closer, there was a little bit more pace than I expected. The trend we've seen since they've changed the point system is that really, you used to have these sprinters who would get in with graded earnings from shorter races who really weren't cut out for the Derby. And then the new trend that we've seen is, I don't want to say a speed favoring race, but, having speed has definitely been useful, and, speed's been at a premium. But I think when you look at this field, there is maybe a little bit more pace than we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree, and especially with the X factors that kind of jumped into the fray toward the latter end. Todd Pletcher having an opportunity with 3 horses that are signed on to compete. Joe Moran, when you looked at the entries, and I know that you kind of had some preconceived notions as to who you liked, but when the entries came out for you, obviously we'll be getting to those selections here in a moment, but what's the first thing that came to your mind?
Yeah, the biggest thing that came to my mind this year is I truly don't believe there is one standout. I feel like every year there's a horse going into the Derby that is really the hype horse in the end. This year, it's kind of, even when you saw the morning lines, I think there was a lot of surprise that Epicenter was not the morning line favorite and Zandon became the morning line favorite. Granted, he ran very impressive in the Bluegrass. But I think leading up to it, I think that goes to show that this race really is wide open. You look at a horse like Taiba, 12-1 morning line, just won the Santa Anita Derby in his 2nd career start, first time stretching out. So for me, I think this is a great betting field. I think you're going to get a lot of value on a lot of horses. And I think you're going to see these odds shift a good amount come post time.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to think that when you look back, I remember the kind of the underlying tone of having not raced as a 2-year-old. I mean, that was the thing here a few years back. And as we well know, Triple Crown winner Justify bucked that trend. And then it was even prior to that Bodemeister nearly bucked that trend. But in this day and age, now we have a situation, as Brian touched on, with Taiba trying to do something that we haven't seen in ever, just making his third career start, actually since 1883, when Leonidas had won over a heavy going, when the Kentucky Derby was contested at 1.5 miles, and they went 2 minutes, 43 seconds. So Taiba is an interesting horse, obviously being trained by Tim Yakteen, as it's been well documented, with Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert being suspended. Tim Yakteen not only having Taiba in the lineup, his horse number 12 at 12-1, but also Messier, who's been dispatched at 8-1, and a horse that certainly has a big look. All right, well, let's get into the handicapping portion of it. And it is pretty amazing when you do go through the tidbits and trends and certain positions that horses haven't necessarily been able to win from. But let's pull up the past performance. I believe we have those. But let's talk about the race in general. Brian DiDonato, how do you see the race? Obviously, you mentioned shape and speed. Talk to us about the horses and your focal points.
I think Epicenter is still probably the legit, logical, maybe most likely winner. I didn't love post 3 for him. He did show he can rate last time, and he's going to have to rate in this field. I guess the question is if he can work out a trip like he did last time. If he works out that trip, I think he's going to be super, super tough to beat, sort of right behind the speed in the pocket. He's already won 1 mile and 3/16. He should handle, an additional 16th, no problem. He really is he's hard to knock in any way unless he gets sort of sucked into the pace. Obviously, the other big horse, Zandon, I guess those two will vie for favoritism. Zandon had a very, very impressive work in his last work over the track, and I think that's kind of helped him get some buzz. But I'm going to go in a different direction. I do think Epicenter is the most likely winner, but I'm going to go for the other son of Not this time, Simplification. I've just been really impressed with his races down in South Florida this winter. And he really did all the dirty work in the Florida Derby. I think the race before that in the Fountain of Youth, he proved that he could effectively come from off the pace, which I think he's going to have to do this time. And then I think the dynamics were against him in the Florida Derby. He kind of got sucked into the pace and had to do all the dirty work. But I think if he's really going to be 20-1 or better than that, or even close to that, I think he's the value of the race.
Well, it's interesting to note that 19 Kentucky Derby winners have had names starting with the letter S. So perhaps you could be in a good position there. Talk to me a little bit about Crown Pride. Now this is one that it kind of comes from left field, and you can see that you've constructed a trifecta box here. First of all, what type of trip do you think Simplification will get? He's had enough seasoning with the 4 starts this year, but I want to hear about Crown Pride, who won in Dubai last out, which was clearly the best race of his life. He's had 6 weeks since, but is this a horse that you really see can making that leap forward? He's been energetic and throughout the week in his training.
I had you always have to kind of try to come up with a crazy long shot in the Derby. Few angles. I did not, going into handicapping this race, I did not anticipate liking him at all, frankly. You watch the UAE Derby, and he made a really impressive, sustained, wide move. He's clearly going to love the distance. We haven't quite seen a ton of Japanese horses come to America and really pan out until this year. Casino Drive, I guess, comes to mind as one from the past, right, world ranks. But Japanese horses, obviously, we saw it at the Breeders' Cup, and we've seen it sort of on the international stage this year and in recent years. They're just really strong. I think they have sort of advanced training methods. They've spent a lot of time invested a lot of money in the last few decades investing in bloodstock from around the world. So, maybe this is the year that they kind of have their breakout Derby horse. He's certainly not, I have him third. He's certainly not the third most likely winner, but at a big price, hopefully, I think he's a little bit interesting.
All right, as far as Simplification and your anticipation of the type of trip that he's going to get, it does appear to be that he did get a favorable post draw. And now that not having to deal with an auxiliary gate as they got 20 straight across. But the fact that Jose Ortiz is back aboard, rides well for the barn, winning at 21%. He did finish behind Wyatt Abario and Charge It, but he was your post time favorite last out. So do you think you'll get 20-1 at post time?
I'd like to hope so. I haven't heard a lot of people picking him. I could see him being the wise guy kind of horse. I think the fact that he didn't have a breeze over the track, well, honestly, I wish he did have one. Might kind of allow him to slide under the radar a little bit. He's not going to be a horse that all the clockers are on or anything like that. I did pull up his last work on XBTV in Florida, and he looked great. It was a very nice work. I believe it was a bullet. So it seems like he's doing well. I think that's maybe going to allow him to slide under the radar a little bit. And then just to talk about my suggested bet. So this is a bet where, I mentioned I think Epicenter is the most likely winner, and Simplification is kind of my value horse. So I'm just trying to play to get both of them in the trifecta with a bunch of the other logical horses. So basically that bet means they just have to hit the board in any position with any of those other horses.
All right. That seems like a reasonable play. Again, what's interesting is that when you look at, say, for example, the sheets, the one thing about Thorograph and Ragozin, they're eerily similar. You see a lot of parallels. And the one thing about Simplification, when you look at his backward move last time on sheets, you probably have to look very closely at the trip that he had. But I think tactical speed is going to go a long way. You pointed out, Brian, that it seems as if there's a fair amount of speed signed on here. Now, as far as real open-up speed from the inside position, Joel Rosario, I think, has to be very proactive with that move. Would you agree, knowing that he's drawn in position number 3?
Absolutely. I think it helps that he has 2 horses inside of him that don't have much speed. So you would hope he kind of gets out there, gets to the rail, and like I said before, just sits that perfect pocket position like he has before. I think he'll be able to shut off. I don't think he's going to, have to rush to the lead or anything. But if he's in that second flight saving ground, the rail's never a bad place to be at Churchill Downs. I think he needs to work out the right trip, but sort of the other 19.
I think when you consider that Steve Asmussen has won essentially every race under the sun except the Kentucky Derby, I think really speaks volumes. I mean, since dating back to 2001, he's something like 0 for 23. But legitimately, I think you can make the assumption this is his best chance, because Epicenter, based on sheet pattern, based on consistency, you get Joel Rosario, who can be a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde, seemingly coming into this race in top form. All right, Joe Moran, thank you, Brian. I love the fact you've got value. Simplification offering up 20-1 on the morning line. Crown Pride, 20-1. I think he's going to get a lot of respect from the Japanese. Right. I don't think his price is going to float up that much, although I think you can make argument that he should probably be 30 or 40-1. But I like your thought process. You got value with Simplification, but logically you think Epicenter is going to be in the mix. All right, Joe Moran, hearing what Brian had to say, I'm sure this didn't affect your opinion at all. And I know that we had talked a little bit earlier on in reference to your pick, but who's your selection, and how do you see the race shaping up for that selection?
Yeah, so first, I mean, we covered Epicenter pretty good there, so we won't touch base there. I do think he's the logical horse that you have to use and has to be involved in a lot of your tickets, whatever you're playing. But the horse that even kind of surprised myself that I landed on here is number 6, Messier. He came off a 60-day little breather coming back in the Santa Anita Derby. And on Thorograph, he did pair 1.5s on the sheets there. And I think he's sitting on a big one. As we said, tactical speed is key in this race. Johnny V is great from the gate. It's going to get him into position. I think this horse is sitting on a big one. His last work, granted, he didn't work over the Churchill Downs track, but at Santa Anita, he worked 111 and change and did it fairly easy. He was solo, had no company with him, and did it all on his own. It really impressed me. When you look at this horse physically, he screams that the 1.25 mile distance is going to suit him. He just gets in this big loping stride and does it very easily in all of his races. He has proved he's been able to sit off the pace sprinting, not going 2 turns and being successful. But I think he can sit a nice tactical trip if they go very fast. At the same time, the more I look and dig into this race, horses that I think have shown speed in the past, horses like Simplification, who I do like, I would love to see that horse come back to his race in the Fountain of Youth and sit off the pace. I think he did his best running there, and that's just my personal opinion, and I think he proved that he can do that. So in all these races, the the break's going to play it all. What horses get affected at the gate, and hopefully it's not Messier, but I think he could put himself maybe even on the lead. If not, if Classic Causeway and a few horses from the outside want a gun, I think he has the ability to sit right off. And I really think he sits a dream trip in this race. My mind, he's going to be dead fit coming off that race. And my feeling is he probably needed that race. And obviously lost to Taiba, who's was the real deal hype horse going into that race. He proved it. Saying that, I'm throwing Taiba out of everything. I truly believe it's just doing too much too fast with this young horse. I didn't love how he missed his first work coming out of the Santa Anita Derby. He did follow it up with a 3/4 pretty sharp drill in Company. At the same time, I'm a little worried. This is a big race. You always say, as Nick, as a former trainer, you can maybe attest to this. The first time horses do something new, it can always be their best, whether that's trying the turf for the first time, whether it's going long for the first time. And the angle I'm playing is maybe Taiba, obviously razor sharp form, was impressive on debut. He was able to handle the 2 turns first time out, and going a 1.8 miles, no easy task doing it. But I have a feeling the horse is going to bounce. His numbers are extremely respectable, and it would be no surprise if he wins. But that's the angle I'm taking, and I think Messier's the better of the 2 Tim Yakeen runners coming into the Derby. So I'm hoping I'm right there, but that's the angle I'm playing there.
Well, I like it. And I think the other point is that Johnny V has had tremendous success, just dealing in this past decade or so, having one dating back to 2011 with Animal Kingdom. He came back with Always Dreaming in 2017, in addition to Authentic in 2020, and then later to be disqualified Medina Spirit last year. I do believe that Messier will likely get a similar trip that we saw with Medina Spirit. And Johnny V, I think I read somewhere, and he's obviously trying to get himself into a tie with the late, great Bill Shoemaker as the second time all-time winningest. Eddie Arcaro, Bill Hardtack tied with 5. Johnny V trying to get himself back into 4th with 4 wins with Bill Shoemaker. So I agree. I think the other point with Messier that's really intriguing is that when you consider the fact that, he's out of a mare that did get better with age and distance. He established a strong top on figures last year. He broke through that 3-year-old debut top from last year and paired. So I'm with you. I think the biggest X factor here is now that you're no longer being housed and trained by Bob Baffert, is that going to make a difference? So Messier, I kind of get the impression he's a little bit of the wise guy horse, though, in listening to various podcasts and insight from various handicappers. Okay, talk to me real quick about Cyberknife. Why do you like this horse? He's 20-1 in the morning line. Brad Cox had his first 2 Derby starters in one race last year. As we all know, Amanda Loon was moved up eventually. Why Cyberknife?
To me, he's the horse that's truly coming into form at the right time. He's a horse that's really taken a step up each and every time as a 3-year-old. Obviously, he did face off against Epicenter early in this 3-year-old season in January, right after he came off the maiden special weight victory, which was technically his second maiden special weight victory after being DQ'd in his debut. But I love what this horse has done since that grade 3 effort. He came back in the A, other than being smart, did it with ease, came back in the Arkansas Derby, and really was, to me, a powerhouse performance. I will agree. I don't think he beat the best field, but he did it the right way. You and I were at Santa Anita watching the race that day, and we kind of sat there. I know you had a little wager on him as well, but 6-1 there, come post time was a gift with the horse that's taken a step up every time. From a sheets pattern, it seems he's moving in the right direction to take another step up. Will that be good enough to win? I'm not quite sure about that, but I do think he's going to run a big race. He's drawn well. He's got tactical speed. He's not going to be a horse that's going to be pressing the lead, but I think he could be sitting in that, 5th, 6th position in a race like this and come running with a sustained run. I think he's only going to get better with more distance. And I just think this is a horse that maybe wasn't fully there mentally as a young horse, and he's just really coming into stride late. And I think he wasn't, as a 2-year-old, unsuccessful. He was very successful as a 2-year-old, but I really think he's putting the pieces all together now. So he's a horse that I'm going to use in everything underneath. I may have to put a little wager. I was kind of going back and forth between Cyberknife and Simplification as my wise guy long shot horse. And ultimately, I just landed on Cyberknife. I just really feel that new top is coming for him. I was impressed with the way he handled everything everything. I know he's not an easy horse to ride by any means. Florent Giroux now will be riding him for the 5th time in a row, so he knows him well. Had a really, really sharp work over the track, a 111-1, and he's just a horse that I think is ready to take that next step up, and that's what I'm going to be hoping for.
Yeah, I think the big factor here is Brad Cox, the trainer, has mentioned last year with his first 2 Derby starters. You had Mandaloon, who was eventually moved up, ran a winning race in defeat, ran a new top and Essential Quality, who came flying late, paired his top. So I'd say the chances of Cyberknife performing are pretty good. So nicely done. It's pretty consensus play here. The Epicenter looks like the safe include. And I kind of feel, like both of you in regards to Zandon. I mean, I feel like he could be sitting on a bounce potentially. So thank you for that, Joe. There is Joe's top 3 Derby picks, in addition to his Super Vecta bet, which will cost $72. I ended up going with an Exacta, and Hannah, who does such a wonderful job behind the scenes. Hannah, if you could put together that graphic in reference to how I see the race. And I am all about Mo Donegal. And I know this is going to be a tall order from the rail, but, I've seen this horse grow and develop. And, it was unfortunate that his sire, Uncle Mo, did not get an opportunity to perform the first Saturday in May, but undoubtedly would have been favored that year. He was a champion 2-year-old. And out of that pulpit mare, there's plenty of stamina influence there. He's coming off of that victory in the Grade 2 Wood Memorial. As much as I would have liked to have had Joel Rosario back, look, Joel Rosario rightfully rides Epicenter, but Irad Ortiz Jr. has had success on Mo Donegal. But this horse is far and away better than he was as a 2-year-old. He's developed. He's stronger, physically looks the part. So I like Mo Donegal. The one difficult aspect is when you look at sheets, is that Pletcher, just one time in 58 attempts as his horses brought a new top to the table on sheet numbers. So it was kind of trying me to decide between Charge It and Mo Donegal. But from a physical sense, mentally, I think Mo Donegal is coming into this race in great order. And I expect him to give Todd Pletcher his first Derby victory since dating back to Always Dreaming in 2017. Of course, Todd Pletcher, a multiple winning Kentucky Derby trainer, as dating all the way back to 2010 with Super Saver. And then, of course, Always Dreaming, looking to get this one home here. The horse that I think is the most consistent outside of Epicenter is Smile Happy. I think he's been kind of unlucky with some of the trips, maybe the rides, but the number that he ran last fall, he's been able to replicate. And in the sheet move, he has actually continued to trend upward. And the one thing about Smile Happy, this horse really hasn't gotten a lot of respect for this Derby. When you consider the fact that he went favored in the Grade 2 Risen Star against Epicenter, he went favored in the Grade 1 Bluegrass against Zandon. He beat Zandon back in the Risen Star. So I just have this suspicion, not to mention the fact that he beat Classic Causeway and White Barrio. How is this horse 20-1 in the morning line? I don't know. But I have a feeling that the Smile Happy is going to come to play in a big way. He's going to be heard from late. And look, if his number were to kind of escalate, to elevate into the 30-1 range, might be worth, playing some just soft win bets, win place bets, or for Brian Didonato's sake, just win bets, because we're all about taking home top prize. So I wanted an exact key box, meaning that Mo Donegal needs to run first or second. If you're going to play this for, say, $2, you see I have 6 horses underneath. So it'd be $24. So in other words, Mo Donegal would need to run first or second for me to cash this bet with either the 3, 5, 6, 8, 12, 16 underneath. And again, I included Taiba. Could he be a Justify-like freak? Could be, but I think he's sitting on a bounce. I tend to agree with Joe. Cyberknife is intriguing to me as well. And because of Brian DiDonato and my respect for his handicapping, I threw Simplification in. Although from a numbers perspective, I think he's retreating backwards. So that's my exact box. So we got exactas, trifectas, superfectas. Brian, did either Joe or myself change any of your thought process in your handicapping?
I'm now worried. I completely tossed Messier and Cyberknife. So I think I can open those PPs again and, think about Think about
I
things.
feel even more confident now.
I like it.
We need to do some head-to-head. We'll have to figure out some head-to-head bets.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. The one thing I'll say I'm surprised, Nick, is you did not give out a supercharged Fecta, which you are notoriously known for. So we may have to send out Nick's supercharged Fecta before the Derby actually goes off. I know you need some more time to think about it, but I'm a little disappointed that you came with an Exacta and not the supercharged Fecta.
Well, I was trying to be simple, Sarge, right? I wasn't in regards to the supercharged Fectas. When my horse racing tax accountant, he looked at the amount of money that I invested in supercharged Fectas in return in 2021, it was far from lucrative. So there you go. And it just gets too complicated because I think once you get beyond like second, like into third, it pretty much turns in anybody's race. You know, like in the supercharged Fectas, I love to go the all button. Well, I can ill afford to do that, but I do think, going back to how I preface this, there are horses that you can eliminate. I just simply feel like there are at least 4 horses or 5 horses in this race that don't belong.
I don't disagree at all. And the one thing I'll say is the Derby, from a gambling perspective, it's a little bit of a dreaming day. It's your run to take a shot. You could hit the lifetime score. So trust your gut, stick to your instincts, and go for it.
Yeah, I think instincts are a big play. Is any other tidbits you wanted to add, Brian? You mentioned the weather. I know that they had anticipated rain into Thursday. It pushed to Friday. Now they're showing a 60% chance on Saturday with a 90% on Oaks Day Friday. How much does the weather affect how you would look at this race?
You know, I would just pay attention to that track. That track can get speed favoring, can get inside favoring. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know as someone who lives here in Louisville. You really can't predict the weather until you look outside. It's always kind of hit or miss. It was raining. I went out to do some errands today. It was pouring rain. And then 15 minutes later, it was like 80 degrees and sunny. So I think you kind of have to just play that by ear and keep an eye on it. But I would definitely pay attention to the track. Particularly keep an eye on if horses are doing well on the rail. I mean, the Derby is such a kind of specific race that maybe it won't apply to the Derby, but I think maybe, you know, some of those later stakes, maybe those sprints or something, just kind of keep an eye on the rail, I would say.
Joe, any thoughts on the weather?
It's always tough. You never know. A lot of horses, especially the West Coast horses, it'd be their first time that they're likely handling rain and the rain like that. So it's definitely a major factor. There's a lot of question marks on a lot of horses. The one thing I'll say is if you're playing exotics, trifectas, superfectas, and the track is wet, pay attention to how it's labeled, muddy, sloppy, whatever it is, and don't be afraid to go back in forums and see horses that have been successful over those tracks, and you can use horses like that underneath at prices.
All right. I also know that we huddled up and discussed an all stakes all-star pick 5, which you'll have an opportunity to take a look at that. It begins in race number 8, approximate post time 2:48 Eastern. That is the Derby City Distaff Stakes presented by Kendall Jackson Winery, going 7/8 of a mile. But I think we all agreed, and Brian, you can kind of remind us of who the key to this ticket will be. Obviously, we've got one single, and that's will be taking place in race 10.
I haven't seen the final. I assume we're talking about Jackie's Warrior, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to get more creative in that race because there were some pretty formidable horses there. But I think pace-wise, Jackie's Warrior kind of seems to have that race to himself early. And, you know, love 7 furlongs. You know, to me, he's in that sequence, he's probably the horse to stand on. And, you know, when you'll probably want to spread in the Derby and you'll probably want to spread in some of the other races. You do have to take a stand somewhere. I mean, he's not going to be, you know, he's going to be a short price, but turning a pick 5 into a pick 4 when you still might have long shots in the other races is never a terrible strategy.
Yeah, I think the pool size will be, I mean, you can only imagine what it'll be on Derby Day. But the other anticipation is the newly installed turf course there. And I know you've had an opportunity to investigate a bit. You've got the Grade 2 American Turf in race 9 and the Grade 1 Turf Classic in race 11. Do you have any thoughts thus far on that turf course? I believe they spent in excess of $10 million as far as the drainage and how it's handled the water intake.
Not yet. I mean, it's so early. It's a beautiful turf course. It's, you know, in the fall, it was kind of frustrating to not have grass racing in Kentucky, but, you know, we're excited to have the turf racing. And, you I'm sure it's a world-class course.
All right. Well, we certainly look forward to it, and we'll have that ticket for you. You should be able to just click the link as we assemble that All-Star Pick 5. And, you know the bottom line, always wager responsibly. I think the other point, as each of us have pointed out, individual horses. You've got Simplification for Brian DiDonato. You've got Messier for Joe Moran. You've got Mo Donegal for yours truly. But Epicenter seems to be the horse that, if we were going to have that buddy, it was late at night and we needed a ride home, it seems like Epicenter is probably the most consistent and reliable of the bunch, but he's not really offering much value in the end. All right, Joe Moran, coming back to you in regards to Edge Racing and where it stands, as the percentages continue to roll. Obviously, we'd like to get a few more into the charm circle. Talk to us about the upcoming runners and what's the latest and greatest with Edge. I know that we've had a few new offerings of late, horses that exited the recently concluded OBS April sale.
Yeah, well, we have a busy May coming up of targeted races. Of course, these are not official until these entries become official, but plans. Obviously, we entered Sun Sand Drink in Hand this afternoon, which was Tuesday for Saturday Derby Days card at Monmouth. The race was not used, so we're gonna enter back on Thursday for Sunday, which hopefully we can get an East Coast and West Coast double with Sun Sand Drink in Hand. National Road making his first start for us at Santa Anita. Really working well. We're excited to see him come back, so that will be exciting. And then you look down the list, Demogorgon, she's been knocking on the door. We kept her in South Florida. We're expecting a big performance here next week, May 12th. And then some of our steady troopers, Escape Route on May 15th, Tepu as well with targeting and maiden special weight going 1 mile. Golden Quality debuted last week, ran a solid third sprinting. He's a horse that we were hoping to debut going 2 turns. We were not able to get in the race at closing day at Sam Houston, but I think we all agree he ran a very respectable race sprinting first time out on dirt. And I think he's only going to get better with time and distance, and all reports from the barn were extremely positive out of the race. So we love to hear that. Then looking down at the bottom of the list, obviously In Due Time targeting the Preakness on May 21st. Going to be a fun time anytime we can get owners in races like that. That's the dream. And to be able to purchase him at the OBS 2-year-old sale was extremely exciting. And last but not least, one of our originals as well making his return. This time we're targeting the Cliffhanger Stakes at Monmouth on May 28th. He was the model of consistency throughout his 3-year-old campaign for us. Ran 10 times and was just our heavy knocker. Every obstacle we threw at him, wherever we shipped him, he showed up and ran his race. The one race, of course, we didn't hit the board was the Grade 1 Saratoga Derby. He had a rough trip, but still was a valiant effort. I believe he was only beaten 6 lengths in the end and was still a very respectable race. So we got a nice lineup ahead of us. Obviously, we purchased 4 2-year-olds between March and April. Only one of those 2-year-olds is still available, and that's a Florida bred colt by the 2017 winner, Kentucky Derby winner, Always Dreaming. He is named Gentleman Jerry, so we're excited about him. And it's going to be just a fun ride. I mean, the stable's continuing to grow. We've got 13 right now. Obviously, 4 of those being 2-year-olds just recently purchased, but it's pretty exciting. And when now we finally see a lineup like that in the month of May where we have 9 runners going, it makes it fun. And every weekend you got something to look forward to.
No, absolutely. And tremendous job, keeping things in check from a management perspective. It's not easy. It's a concerted effort. And, again, with the trainers that we have, their communication has been upfront, foremost, and very transparent, as we like to keep it here with Edge, as well as our parent company in My Racehorse. All right, gentlemen, I wanted to not yet quite say goodbye to you. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, a couple of pop quiz, if you will. This question for Joe Moran. What is the drink of choice for the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I can't say I've ever actually had it, which is a little disappointing. I was able to attend the Derby 2 years ago for Authentic in a weird scenario where the crowd was empty, not many concession stands open. But we're going to say the drink of the Kentucky Derby is the mint julep.
Bravo, my friend. Could you take a guess as to how many mint juleps are made each Kentucky Derby.
Wow. Oh, I don't even want to guess because I'm going to be so far off. We have how many people? What's the capacity of Churchill Downs again?
I'm just saying 100,000 range.
100,000. I'm going to say, oh gosh, 300,000 mint juleps.
Yeah, you reached hard. You must be one of those multiple julep makers. Even though you have it, 120,000 mint juleps are made and served over the Derby weekend. Total of 10,000 bottles of Old Forester mint julep ready to serve cocktail mix.
Wow.
1,000 pounds of fresh mint. 60,000 pounds of ice. Can you imagine that? 60,000 pounds. All right, Brian DiDonato. This is a good one. Garland of roses. What would you say the weight is for the garland roses?
I'm going to go with 25 pounds.
All right. Well, you were close, sort of, but no cigar. 40 pounds with more than 400 roses and a garland of roses draped over that horse in the winner's enclosure. Tremendous. It's a big weekend. And gentlemen, I can't tell you how much I appreciate not only working with you, but your friendship, and look forward to this journey going forward. But most importantly, looking forward to cashing a few bets this weekend.
Me too. Can't wait. And it's always a pleasure with you guys, and hope we can do a few more of these. Hopefully one leading up to the Preakness and maybe the Belmont as well.
Absolutely. All right. The greatest 2 minutes in sports happening this Saturday, May 7th, 2022. Grade 1 Kentucky Derby sponsored by Woodford Reserve. Approximate post time 6:57 Eastern. We hope you enjoyed this pre-Kentucky Derby analysis brought to you by Edge Racing in a partnership with My Racehorse.